Hi, and welcome back to EuroCosmo TV and our Land of the Free series. My name is Andrej Novak, and in today's video I'm going to talk about the Pandora's box that was opened by the ruling of the Supreme Court in Trump versus United States in July 2024. Even though it's been half a year since the decision of 6 Supreme Court justices against 3, it should be front and center on people's minds due to the potentially disastrous consequences of the decision to establish presidential immunity for crimes committed as official acts. To illustrate the potential dangers of this immunity, I will present a worst-case scenario that hopefully never comes to pass. Before I start doing this, I want to acknowledge that lots of experts, pundits, journalists, and other commentators, and even the 3 dissenting Supreme Court justices, have pointed out the dangers of this decision. Many have also pointed out the precarious situation American democracy is in at the moment and the difficult times it is facing. However, none of the scenarios I've become aware of is as bad as the worst one I can imagine. And because of that, I've been mulling over doing this video since the Supreme Court ruling last summer. I was considering whether it might potentially be too dark and disturbing, and I could give people wrong ideas. So even though most of the script for this video was written before the inauguration on the 20th of January, I only decided to actually make the video now, because I believe it's more important to warn of what might happen in order to give people the chance to prepare for it and to recognize it when it does. So this should be understood as a warning that should raise the awareness of what to really watch out for and provide extra time to prevent or counteract any steps in this direction. So here we go. Often it has been said that the way the system in the US has been designed, it would take a long time to dismantle. That members of the administration itself, Congress, large-scale protests, or the courts could prevent the dismantling of American democracy. But if a president were to be ruthless, brutal, and decisive enough, it could happen a lot quicker. The scenario assumes that the president is willing to kill anyone standing in his or her way to absolute unchecked power and has his or her loyal people in the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies willing to execute any orders, including orders to kill American citizens. And that such a president would also be willing to pardon all those committing crimes such as abductions and executions for him. Right now, because there is neither clarity about what constitutes an official act by a president, nor where exactly to draw the line of distinction for non-official acts, a very broad immunity can be claimed by said president intent to gain the greatest possible power and control, and it would only be logical for such a president to go after the institutions which can limit or take away this very immunity, such as the Supreme Court, i.e., any judges who might make decisions against his or her will. So, a president with his loyal people in place in relevant cabinet posts, departments, and agencies, especially the ones in control of armed personnel, arms, justice, prosecutions, and intelligence, could hold a secret meeting and announce to those top officials that the deep state is subverting the will of the people and therefore democracy, and that he or she can only execute his or her popular mandate for change by eliminating the top representatives of the deep state in purges. He or she would then issue secret kill orders and assure said small core of officials that all who participate in any way in these executions are or will be pardoned to the fullest extent and rewarded for their service to America. The first to be eliminated might be at least 4 Supreme Court justices, because this would prevent the Supreme Court from making any decisions, because it needs a quorum of at least 6 judges to be able to issue rulings. The president could therefore have Supreme Court justices killed, pardon their killers, be himself immune from prosecution for this, and pick nominees to replace the judges, or simply leave the court permanently short of the necessary number of judges needed to make a decision. The president could simply do away with and ignore the posse comitatus norm, which prohibits the use of the military within the United States, and use either highly trained snipers or special forces commandos from absolutely loyal units, or loyal individuals on the ground for this, Or he or she could use Reaper drones to eliminate judges and their family members by dropping bombs on their residences or cars, as has been common US practice abroad in the war on terror. Using the military inside the US, once the decision has been taken to do so, is generally not at all limited to crowd control measures and troops with light arms. It can include the entire arsenal of the military, including drones, artillery, helicopters, fighter jets, and other aircraft, and even naval resources. And of course, intelligence agencies could be similarly abused. If such radical and unconscionable orders were issued against Supreme Court justices, then it would equally be possible to hit political enemies such as former presidents, congressional leaders, military officers deemed not to be loyal to the president, and the owners of traditional and social media, whose assets could be seized and taken under strict control. Alternatively, for more plausible deniability for the president and top officials, bodyguards and protection measures could be pulled from those identified as enemies, traitors, or representatives of the deep state, and the assassinations could be left to extreme elements of the president's civilian supporters. By the time Americans would wake up after as little as one bloody night of the long knives, they would be greeted by morning news informing them that the president has taken bold and decisive action against the deep state the night before and decapitated it to free the government of its influence and give power back to the people. Anyone connected with the deep state would henceforth be banned from the media, and the administration would continue to go after whomever it would consider traitors who subvert the will of the people. Any protests would be dealt with brutally, with lethal force and by mass detention in camps. It took Hitler about 2 months to turn Germany's pre-World War II democracy into a dictatorship. After the disastrous ruling of the Supreme Court in Trump versus United States, it could be done quicker than that in the United States. Most of the institutions could be destroyed within days, and the new Machiavellian way through which the president would rule would be fear. The vast majority of people would switch to survival mode, or even Stockholm Syndrome, and refrain from open acts against the government. And that would be the end of democracy, liberty, rule of law. Yes, that includes property rights and the Constitution. For opening this Pandora's box, the 6 judges who passed this decision, namely Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Clarence Thomas, Justice Samuel Alito, Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, are going to be remembered as some of the worst Supreme Court justices in history, because they failed to realize that they gave the president the opportunity to have them executed and the Supreme Court destroyed without facing any legal consequences for it, if he or she just framed it as an official act. On top of the vast powers of the presidency and his immunity, the president also is commander-in-chief of the strongest and most lethal fighting force as well as nuclear arsenal in the world, and the most numerous and omnipresent intelligence services too. Go figure what a ruthless, dangerous individual could do with all that in America and worldwide, once all checks and balances and division of power are gone. It would mean very dark times ahead for the United States and the world in the foreseeable future. Luckily, for now, this is just a hypothetical worst-case scenario, in which democracy and the rule of law are all but lost before most people even hear the news about it. A president with similar designs, but wanting to play it safer, might opt for a more gradual process to achieve the same results in the course of months or even years, in a process akin to the proverbial slow boiling of a frog, in which the victim does not realize how serious the situation is until it's too late. In such a scenario, the president may opt for a policy vis-à-vis the Supreme Court trying to assert itself against him at some point by simply not accepting and implementing its decisions. Basically adopting a kind of thinking similar to President Andrew Jackson in the 1830s, saying that the Supreme Court had made its decision, now let it enforce it, which the court cannot, but relies on the executive branch under the US Constitution. But either way, Even if the courts and the Constitution will function more or less as before, it still is important not to take this for granted and realize that they could well be threatened by an administration intent on neutralizing them. Be aware that an attack on rule of law, federal courts, and the Supreme Court is a very serious attack on the Constitution and the very democracy, rights, and freedoms America has stood for since the Declaration of Independence. And that's it for today's video on last year's Supreme Court decision in Trump versus United States. If you appreciated this stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked presidential power, be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications as well. To make donations towards more frequent and higher quality videos, check out my Patreon account for regular support and special access, or my Buy Me a Coffee page for a one-off contribution. See the video description for details. Thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to welcoming you back on my channel soon.